Okay, good afternoon. And while waiting for the others to come in, and also since I'm also in hurry, so we can start with our session. And for today's session, we're going to talk about ethics in research. Now, last time I promised you to show another example of a social research in agribusiness. So at this point, before we do that, if we still have remaining time, or we can also do that some other next time, no, some other time. Um, so um, yeah, but before that, let me just have a screenshot of our. So and also we are waiting for the reporting, no, proposal reports to be ready. And 21. Okay, so maybe let's start with our presentation.
In research. Ethics in research is important as it provides researchers with ethical principles or guidelines for the successful conduct of research. But first, what is ethics? Broadly defined, ethics is the morality of a human act. By morality, we mean the rightness or wrongness of a human act. Practically speaking, ethics is concerned with what is good for the people and the society as a whole. Thus, ethics really matters because it urges us to do good to others and take responsibility of what we do. As a branch of philosophy that concerns itself with questions of how people ought to act, ethics therefore provides rules that govern the society as a whole. This explains why behaving ethically means doing the right thing at the right time. In research, ethics provides guidelines for the responsible conduct of research. Moreover, ethics allows researchers and scholars to further educate themselves and monitor their activities in the conduct of research so as to ensure a high ethical standard. Now, it must be noted that aside from the fact that researchers must ensure that research subjects or participants are not placed in harm's way, they need to be reminded that they have the moral obligation to provide maximum benefits to the participants. This means that researchers need not think only of their own interest while they conduct the research. It is for this reason that researchers must be guided by ethical principles in the conduct of the research to maintain research integrity and avoid.
Mabuhay! My name is Mike Yan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of ManyChat. I'm really excited
avoid research misconduct. As we can see, there are acceptable and unacceptable conduct of research, especially when humans and animals are involved. Needless to say, research misconduct can lead to dire consequences if ignored. Just consider, for example, the famous Nazi human experimentation. As is well known, the Nazi human experimentation was a series of medical experiments on a large number of concentration camp prisoners, including children, conducted by Nazi Germany. As is well known, during the Nazi regime in Germany, Nazi medical doctors forced concentration camp prisoners to participate in the experiment. In fact, the prisoners did not willingly volunteer to participate in the experiment, and no consent was given for the procedures. As records show, the experiments had resulted in trauma, disfigurement, permanent disability, and death. Some of the famous experiments that the Nazi medical doctors conducted in the prisoners include sterilization and fertilization experiments, head injury experiments, mustard gas experiments, freezing experiments, malaria experiments, experiments on twins, and bones, muscles, and nerve transplantation experiments. Now, here are some ethical principles that guide research. Honesty. Researchers ought to honestly report data and results of the study, including the methods and procedures employed in data gathering, as well as publication status. Thus, researchers should not falsify, fabricate, and misrepresent data and results. Objectivity. Researchers should uphold objectivity and scientific rigor at all times. Thus, researchers should strive to avoid all forms of bias in research, such as bias in experimental design, data analysis and interpretation, peer review process, grant writing, and other facets of research. Confidentiality. Researchers should always uphold the principle of confidentiality. One way of effectively doing this is to protect confidential communications, such as papers or grants submitted for publications, patient records, and the like. Competence. Researchers are supposed to be knowledgeable and experts in their own discipline or field of specialization. In short, researchers should be competent scholars. Thus, they ought to maintain and improve their professional competence and expertise through lifelong education and learning. More importantly, they ought to take steps to promote competence in science. Integrity. Researchers ought to keep their promises and honor agreements, such as agreements with donors and research participants. Thus, researchers need to strive for consistency in thought and action. Legality. Research always has a legal dimension. Thus, researchers ought to obey laws and relevant institutional and governmental policies. Maturity and openness. Knowledge is supposed to be free. Hence, researchers must willingly share data, results, ideas, and resources. They must also be open to constructive criticisms and new ideas. Respect for intellectual property. Researchers ought to honor copyrights, patents, and other forms of intellectual property. Thus, they should not use methods, data, and results owned by other researchers or scholars without permission or proper acknowledgement. More importantly, researchers should avoid plagiarism at all times. Responsible publication. Researchers need to publish in order to advance knowledge and scholarships, and not just advance one's own career. They also need to avoid wasteful publication, such as publishing in predatory journals and duplicative publication. Non-discrimination. Researchers ought to avoid all forms of discrimination against colleagues and students on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, and other factors that are related to scientific competence and integrity. For this reason, researchers ought to respect their colleagues and treat them fairly. Senior researchers also need to help educate, mentor, and advise students. Senior researchers, therefore, have to promote the welfare of their students and allow them to make their own decisions. Human subjects protection. Researchers should respect human dignity, privacy, and autonomy at all times. When conducting research on human subjects, researchers should take precautionary measures to minimize, if not completely avoid, harms and risks. They also need to maximize the benefits that participants may get from the results of the study. For instance, if a researcher discovers a cure for a particular disease through her research on indigenous plants, A reasonable part of the patent should go to the indigenous community or communities where the plants are located. Animal care. In recent years, we have what we call animal rights, thanks to the efforts of animal rights advocates. For this reason, researchers should respect animal rights at all times. As a result, they ought to show utmost care for animals when using them in research. Researchers, therefore, should not conduct unnecessary or poorly designed animal experiments. Social responsibility. As already emphasized, researchers should conduct research not only for the advancement of their own career, but for the good of society as a whole. Thus, researchers should strive to promote social good and mitigate social harms.
Okay, so I guess that's all, no, for this video is about ethics in research or research ethics, no, and for those who miss it, you can I will always be posting this recorded video, and you can just um watch again through the YouTube channel. So although this was not part of, kasi I just follow what is recommended by yung ating outline is the same format that I followed from CHED. Although it has not been part since yung ating yung ating wait lang, yung ating course outline ay hindi naman medyo updated ngayon, and nowadays CHED is considering research ethics, no, as part of every institution. So since in fact, no, lahat ng mga soon sa college it will be part na ng research research process. So kailangan alam natin ano ba yung ethics in research. And I guess among all the videos here, this is one of my favorite na presentation by this YouTuber. And yeah, yung mga guidelines, socially. So sa lahat, anong mga studies ba na kailangan merong ethics consideration? So as you can see, no, lahat ng studies which involves humans, and whether medical or social sciences. And so since agriculture and business involves human studies, no, in social research, through qualitative and even quantitative. So part siya ng ating mga consideration. Dapat sa pag-interview ng mga tao, we have ethical consideration, no? As mentioned earlier in the video, dapat meron tayong consent. For example, dapat willing yung ating mga interviewee na mag-participate sa research. Dapat fully understood ng ating mga ini-interview kung ano ang purpose ng research. Dapat merong social value, no? Does your research will benefit the community? Kasi if not, then surang-surang na siya, no? And if makatabang ba siya, dili ba siya makadaot? Kasi kung makadaot man lang siya, or if ever na siya mga sensitive na mga topics, like for us, sensitive topics like ano ba yun? Yung mga siguro sexuality, abuse. So yun yung mga sensitive topic na kailangan natin i-consider. So like for example, prostitution, those are very sensitive topics, and we need to see that our participants in the research are willing to share their experiences or their views, or yung kanilang interview. So, um, so what else? Although lahat naman, especially in medical, no, sa mga human medical aspect, health aspect, kailangan talaga ethics, no? Kasi dili pwede ta mag-conduct nga like for example, cloning person. It's not acceptable by our ethics. So dili ta pwede mag-clone nga pareha natog dagway. Although the cloning animals has been done through research, and they are also cloning some parts of human organs already for the purpose of diseases nowadays. And however, it's still unacceptable. And in the Philippines, we also follow guidelines and ethics through FREB and also in international. So this is just a very short introduction of what is research ethics and ethics in research, no? And most especially like the objectivity dapat I mean truthful yung pag-conduct nyo ng research, totoo ang data ninyo, wala mo nag-fabricate og data nga naghimo-himo lang mo, although walay interview na hitabo pero nag-interview lang mo, no? For example like that. And if it's really honest to goodness na kind of research. And also your qualification as a researcher. So those are the things that has been mentioned here, no? And the methods that you use should be, yeah, number one is honesty, objectivity, so kailangan dili bias, no? And what else? Confidentiality, meaning those that you have found out from your research, dili siya dapat nimo we ka na manday si kuan, no, si Jessa, nabuntisan manday na sa una, no, ana, something like that, no, that should be confidential. So and competence, you have the um the competence, the qualification to do the research. And what else? Integrity, so kailangan the yung research mo is built on legal issues or always conforming with the rules and regulation. And then maturity and openness. So you're willing to publish the results of your data, not for the sake of money, but for the sake of humanity, for the development of research and our community. And intellectual property. So kailangan i-cite mo yung mga persons that needs to be na kanang acknowledge, no? Yung mga tao kung saan mo nakuha yung knowledge na yan, and also sino yung mga authors. So you should always be tawag doon very conscious of the intellectual property right. And responsible publication. So once you have the result of your data, you have once you finish and you have the result, you also have the responsibility to publish it, no, responsibly, by again citing the by acknowledging proper authors, acknowledgement, and funders, or if it has funding agency. And also you do not discriminate the people that you have interviewed, no, walang discrimination. Also in terms of choosing the right person, and also samples, or what we call that, subjects. And also in ethics is built to protect talaga the general welfare of our research, no, that includes our participants, ourselves, and also the results all in all. So yun lang naman for this session. I guess we don't have time na for the rest, for the one that the example na sabi ko, maybe next meeting. Kasi I just remember, no, kasi I'm into ethics research this time. So na-remember ko, kailangan ko pala i-share sa inyo. And meron pa pala about animal care. So when you do the hindi lang humans but also animal, no? Okay, meron din tayong tinatawag na Animal Care or Welfare Act, no? Ibig sabihin hindi natin paglaruan yung mga animals. Meron din silang karapatan na hindi i-abuse. Although in livestock, although we are producing them for food, but then as long as they are still growing and alive, there is what we call Animal Welfare Act then to take care of them properly, na dili lang nimo siya ibinuangan, ibitay-bitay maski asa, no? And before nimo siya ihawon, in fact nakakatawa, before natin siya ihawin, kailangan dili siya stress and dili pud sila parang hadlok, no, psychologically or wala man silang emotion but the condition. So that's really really funny, but we have animal lovers in the world that have created the Animal Welfare Act. And lastly, yung social responsibility natin. Kailangan maging responsible tayo in dealing with our community through our research. No, in dapat ba if the objectives of your research, is it for the development and for the goodness of our society or not? So yun yung mga aspects. So do you have any questions or clarification regarding our session today or the ethics in research? So hopefully for those who came late, you can review what we have discussed. So let me just check. Do you have any questions or clarification? Anyone? 7, okay. So if none, then that would be all for this afternoon. So hopefully you're gonna review again the video presentation later, and I hope to see you again next meeting. So sorry, I'm in a hurry. So, but if you have questions or clarification later, then you just chat me, no, in the group chat. So again, thank you, everyone, and that would be all for this session. So bye-bye.